Operation Gladio meets Secret Society with me, the Colonel, and War Hamster Brady. How are you today, Brady?
I am outstanding. Thank you. Feels like it's been a little bit too long since we did this, but shake off the rust pretty quickly. Yeah, I literally have had about 2 months off, both from doing shows with you and Doug. It's been like maybe 2 shows in all of just like November, December. So try to get back on a regular schedule if we could.
Yep.
So what shall we talk about, huh?
I think we're finishing up Scroll and Key.
Well, we're not going to get done today, but we're going to make some progress.
All right.
All right. When last we left off, let me go ahead and I'll share my screen here momentarily. Big picture, if people haven't been watching, we're studying secret societies, most notably the secret societies of Yale University. We did Skull and Bones and then Scroll and Key. And with Scroll and Key, it's kind of interesting because they started out as mostly a scholastic club. And as we've gone through the decades, we see them more and more. Their alumni are involved in all of the key decision-making points, from espionage to diplomacy to big business, you name it. And it's just the same patterns over and over again. They go to the grooming schools, they go to Yale, they get tapped on the shoulder, and now they've got a free pass to just about anything they want to do in life. And it just seems that every single one of these people gets involved in these major schemes to basically have the one world order rule the world. Sound about right?
Yes.
And we do this with the Colonel because there's an awful lot of overlap with the Operation Gladio story.
Too much, fortunately.
Let's get my screen up there. So we just gotten through the 1920s. That guy's like, there's a Rockefeller, Benjamin Spock, guy by the name of Sheldon Huntington, John Hay Whitney of the famous Whitney family, Paul Mellon, and we finished up with doing a duplicate of Benjamin Brewster Jennings. So now we get to the 1930s. And we've got some gentlemen here who are just absolutely fascinating. Let's see if I can get a good picture here. All right. First guy we're going to talk about is a Raymond Richard Guest, Scroll and Key, class of 1931. You can see there in his bio, he would eventually become the United States ambassador to Ireland. Now, does that happen unless you've got really good connections?
No.
How many of these Scroll and Key guys have been ambassadors to major American interests?
A lot of them.
Yeah, you got to be in the club to be an ambassador. Have you ever heard of Mr. Raymond Richard Guest?
Yes. I don't remember exactly where. I'd have to go back through my notes, but I've definitely heard of him.
Okay, well, we're going to go through my notes on him right now.
Okay.
You want to talk about connections. This guy, if you want to talk about born with a silver spoon, this is the guy. So he's born in 1907 in New York City. If you go to his wiki page, the first paragraph describes him as an American businessman, thoroughbred racehorse owner, and a polo player. And of course, he would eventually become the ambassador to Ireland. Before we got on the air, Colonel and I were talking about polo and thoroughbreds and how they really are the sport of the kings.
And the mafia.
And what? Oh, yeah. Yeah. But if you go to these, events like the Colonel's been to the Kentucky Derby, I have not. We had a polo field just down the street from our house in Del Mar in San Diego. And then, of course, Del Mar Racetrack. Opening day there it was absolutely the party of the year. Everyone was dressed to the nines. But going to a polo match is really, it's probably the most elitist activity you could possibly do. I mean, ladies in high heel dresses go out there and pick up the poop, that kind of stuff. And it's supposed to be a very, anyways. So these polo guys, these thoroughbred racehorse owners, which a lot of these have connections to Yale. You're talking real muckety-muck, old money. Fair enough?
Fair enough.
All right. Well, Raymond's got a father, of course, and his name was Frederick Edward Guest. Frederick, or Freddie as we'll call him, used to be a British cabinet minister. He was the chief whip of Prime Minister David Lloyd George's coalition Liberal Party from 1917 to 1921. Colonel, what was England up to in that time period?
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. End of World War One, Treaty of Versailles, carving
Yes.
up the Middle East.
Yes.
So his dad's totally part of that. So still working for the British government. In 1921-22, Freddie becomes the Secretary of State for the Air. So basically the commander of the Air Force, British.
Wow.
Freddie also won the bronze medal with the British polo team of the 1924 Paris Olympics. So we're talking about, very high breeding. Freddie was the third son of a guy by the name of Ivor Guest, who was the first Baron Wimborne. So now we're getting into royalty here. And his mother was Lady Cornelia Spencer Churchill.
Wow.
Yeah, his mom was the eldest daughter of John Spencer Churchill, who's the 7th Duke of Marlborough. And yes, this makes Freddie the first cousin to British Prime Minister Winston Churchill.
Wow.
We're not done yet. He's got a lot more connections than that. But this is a pretty rare air he's rubbing elbows with, yeah?
Yes.
All right, so the Guest family made their fortune in iron and steel in the 19th and 20th centuries, and they married into the aristocracy. It's like our Dollar Princess thing, but they stayed in England. They bought their titles. The Guest family were always conservatives and happened to be very close friends with a gentleman by the name of Benjamin Disraeli.
Ooh.
Who's Benjamin Disraeli, Colonel?
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Probably the most influential person in England for the entire 19th century. He ran a point man for the Rothschild banking family.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was Disraeli.
Yeah, because his name comes up a lot in the formation and not the actual creation of Zionism, but as it unfolded, he was part and parcel of that.
100%.
Wow.
Disraeli basically worked for the Rothschilds. He was their guy in the government.
That's
And
crazy.
he's got this family, the Guest family, is best buddies with him. So the whole family's politically active. You can go through the family tree and find like 6 or 7 people who are members of parliament. Freddie's sister, Frances, married a guy by the name of Frederick Thesiger, who was the first Viscount of Chelmsford and who would then become the Viceroy of India from 1916 to 1921.
And what were they doing then?
In India, I don't know, putting down peasant revolts.
And shipping opium over to China?
Just a bit.
A little bit, like a whole lot.
Right in the middle of World War I, this guy is, the Viceroy of India is basically the governor of that entire country for the British. And of course, Chelmsford is a very well-known Freemason and was the Grand Master of the United Grand Lodge of New South Wales.
Wow.
Yeah. So we got a little Masonic, some royalty, some Rothschilds, all of that with one guy so far.
And opium.
Oh, yes. I've got to have that. Well, these stories wouldn't be complete unless we got into people's military past, right?
Right.
So Freddie Guest, again, this is Raymond's father, served in Egypt in 1899 as part of the Camel Corps who defeated the Khalifa, which leads us straight into the whole story of Lawrence of Arabia.
And the Muslim Brotherhood creation.
Uh-huh. So that's what Freddie did in Egypt. Oh, but he wasn't done. Goes to a place called South Africa in 1901.
which would be the Boer War.
The Second Boer War, he fought in that.
Which, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, and we just recently had an exchange on Twitter about how the Boer War impacted Venezuela in 1895, when America decided to become an empire.
And can I throw out that the whole creation of the concept of stay-behind units was discovered in the First Boer War, and the South African Boers, primarily farmers, were able to pre-position caches of weapons during the First Boer War and defeat the British military that was far superior in numbers and equipment because of this pre-positioning of these caches of weapons. And it was Winston Churchill, who was a reporter embedded in the British military during that war, that watched this in real time and reported on it. And they came back the second time, which this guy was part of, and was able to defeat the Boers because they were then prepared for that war tactic. So this is literally the creation of the tactic of stay-behind units and the defeat of them that we're talking about here.
And Freddie Guest is there with his cousin Winston Churchill.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So those two guys are pretty close. So by 1906, Guest is back in England, and he basically serves as Winston Churchill's private secretary. World War I breaks out, and Freddie returns to active duty. His role was aide-de-camp to Field Marshal Sir John French.
Always in those roles of the gatekeeper.
Bingo! I knew you would love that one. I found a quote on this one about what he actually was doing. So this is straight off his wiki page. It says Guest performed, ready for this, confidential missions for French liaising with the War Office and with political leaders.
Yeah.
Does that sound like spy work to you, or espionage?
Yes. That's exactly what it is.
Exactly, but they didn't want to actually say that, but they just described it. So that's this guy, Raymond's father. So, pretty interesting background.
Covert operations.
Yes.
Wow.
That's his father's side. You want to hear about his mother's side? Raymond's mother?
I do want to point out that it does say on here that he was appointed to the Privy Council, which is a huge, big deal.
Yes.
That is huge. But yes, go ahead.
Yeah, that's inner circle stuff.
Yes. That's like, at the time, that was basically the equivalent of the CFR in America. It's huge.
So Raymond's maternal grandfather was a guy by the name of Henry Phipps Jr., and that name's familiar. It's because that was Andrew Carnegie's business partner at Carnegie Steel.
Oh, my goodness.
Mm-hmm. So Raymond himself, this gentleman in the picture, where do you think he went to high school?
I'm going to say it's one of the grooming schools.
Well, of course.
So we got Xavier or Andover. Which one is it?
He's Phillips Andover.
Okay.
Okay, so then World War II breaks out, and of course he's got to be involved. He's now American, even though his father was British, right?
Yeah.
He joins the Navy and served on minesweepers. But of course, he then gets promoted to the head of the Navy section of the OSS in London.
Of course he does.
Of course, because you can't be scrolling key without being part of the OSS, can you?
No.
It's ridiculous. I'd just like to see just a few more that just weren't in the OSS, just to make it reasonable.
It's like it's a grooming school for the OSS.
Pretty much. He would actually rose all the way to the rank of commander. He got all kinds of awards, and that's another trend, I think. These well-born kids, when they become officers, they get an awful lot of medals. Makes you start to wonder about the fruit salad, you know? So here's a list I got from him. He got a Bronze Star, a Legion of Merit, the Croix de Guerre, Cross of War. From the French, you got the Order of the British Empire, the Norwegian Cross, and the Danish Defense Medal. So he could defend Greenland.
So he must have been with William Casey up in the Scandinavian area.
That would make sense given the Norwegian and the Danish medals.
Yeah.
Comes back to America. Becomes the member of the Virginia State Senate from 1947 to 53. Spent most of the next years just involved in thoroughbred racing and playing polo. And eventually become part of the Museum of Polo Hall of Fame. Somebody decides he needs to be the ambassador to Ireland in 1965. Who would that have been? That would be LBJ. Yeah. All right, so here's where just a few more connections with him. This charmed life that he's led, right? His first marriage is to a woman named Elizabeth Polk. And yes, she's related to former U.S. President James K. Polk.
Oh my gosh.
That didn't work out, so he gets married again to a woman by the name of Ellen Tuck French Astor, who was previously married to John Jacob Astor VI.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, that's not even the best. His third, she's a cousin, the second wife, was a cousin of Rhode Island Governor William Henry Vanderbilt III.
Oh my gosh.
Think we got a ruling class in this country?
Yes. Holy crap.
His third marriage was to a woman named, get this, Princess Caroline Cecile Alexandrine Jean Murat. The Murat name is pretty famous because she is the granddaughter of a Joachim Napoleon Murat, the fifth Prince of Murat, which makes him a member of the Napoleon Bonaparte Murat family.
Holy moly. This one guy is like related to everybody.
Yeah, and the Prince of Murat would give up his Paris house to Woodrow Wilson for his use during the Paris Peace Conference in 1919.
Wow.
But Raymond spent all his time riding horses. Pretty interesting guy, huh?
So I don't think he spent all of his time riding horses, especially if he was in the OSS. I bet he did a whole lot of other things.
Never worked a hard day in his life. I can almost guarantee that.
But I bet he traveled a lot, and I bet he did a lot of intelligent stuff.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean,
especially in those circles.
Yeah, and he did it at cocktail parties.
Right.
And he was invited to all of them because he knew he was related to everyone.
Correct.
All right, that's our boy Raymond.
Wow.
Next guy we're going to talk about is a Robert Ferdinand Wagner II, class of 1933. He's born in 1910 in New York City. His father was a U.S. Senator named Robert Ferdinand Wagner I. So let's talk about Dad a little bit because he's interesting. He's a German-born American attorney who was a United States Senator from New York from 1927 to 1949. Interesting time to be a senator, huh?
Yeah.
The guy was born in Prussia, immigrated to the U.S. at the age of 8 in 1885. It was Prussia then, not Germany. Goes to New York Law School, and it becomes part of the Tammany Hall Democrat political machine in Manhattan.
Of course he does.
We're going to talk about Tammany a little bit here today, but let me get to that in a second here. This is the part where we get into machine politics and the corruption. And I hope everybody's seen the movie Gangs of New York, 'cause it's a pretty good depiction of how Tammany worked. But if you think politics are dirty today, the 1800s want you to hold their beer. And it didn't change much with the turn of the century. So Wagner Sr. Was really close with a famous New York Democrat named Al Smith. Ooh. And these guys would be the big progressive reformers for the Democrats. And their whole coalition was unions, social workers, a few businesses, some middle-class activists, and a bunch of civil reform organizations. This would be the progressive wing of the party. Robert would become the governor of New York in 1923 until 28. Sorry, that was Smith was the governor. Robert was a mayor. So still talking about Al Smith. He tried to run for president in 1928. He was actually the Democrat nominee, but lost to Hoover in a landslide in 28. Smith then ran for president in 1932 and lost to FDR. This gets interesting because FDR is from New York and Smith's from New York. They're both Democrats. So this is where you got the different factions. The Tammany Hall people kind of represent the working class Democrat, whereas FDR represents the aristocratic class.
Right.
Smith very much opposed FDR's New Deal. There's a lot of antipathy. Yeah, they went at it. They're an antagonistic relationship for quite a while. Till something interesting happened. Smith had become part of a company called the Empire State Incorporated. This was and Smith was part of the political movement that built the Empire State Building. Problem with that is it was called in the tabloids the Empty State Building because no businesses had offices there. The place was empty.
Yep.
And was losing money. And FDR comes in and he's created this thing called the Reconstruction Finance Corporation and has it rent a bunch of floors in the Empire State Building, which really helps Smith financially, and all of a sudden they've become good friends again.
Funny how that works.
Yeah. Democrat politics in the Empire's Empty State Building. I like it. It's pretty interesting how it was built. It was built like in record time, like less than 18 months to put that thing up.
Like the Pentagon.
I didn't know that about the Pentagon.
Yes, I was there on one of their major anniversaries, and it took them about 18 months.
What year is it?
I don't remember exactly.
But is it before World War II or no?
Again, I don't remember. I'll look while you keep on going.
Okay. So Robert Wagner, Sr. still. There's in 1911, there's something called the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire. And apparently a bunch of people died. And Wagner gets named the chair of the State Factory Committee to investigate it over the next 4 years. Of course, his vice chair was a guy by the name of Al Smith, who we just talked about. And this led to all kinds of new labor laws in New York. And it really gave Tammany a reputation as progressive reformers. And previously, the reputation was all about corruption. And now they became a big part of the pro-worker progressive party. And Democrats have pretty much ruled New York ever since.
Okay, are you ready for this?
Yep.
I knew what date it started. I just didn't know what date it stopped. It got finished on 15 January 1943. Do you want to know what date it started?
Pearl Harbor.
September 11th, 1941.
Interesting. 60 years to the day before a missile flew into it.
Yes.
Oh, was that an airplane?
Weird. They love their dates.
Should be a good time for me to repeat that the New World Order speech was given by George H.W. Bush 10 years to the day prior
yes.
to 9/11. Yeah.
They love their dates.
They do. All right, so Robert Sr. still, we're not on a junior. He's elected to the U.S. Senate in 1927. Some of the committees he was on were patents, public lands and surveys, banking and currency. He is the guy who helped write and introduced in the Senate something we all know and love as the Social Security Act. Biggest Ponzi scheme in history. This guy is one of the architects.
Yep.
He would become a delegate to the United Nations Monetary and Financial Conference in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire in 1944, just over the hill from me.
Wow.
People don't know what the Bretton Woods Agreement was. That's pretty much created the entire modern financial system post-World War II.
Yep.
The dollar supremacy, created the World Bank, the IMF, all these ICSID and ISDS loans we're talking about with Venezuela. This all happened at Bretton Woods, and Robert Wagner Sr. was there.
Wow.
Same Wagner Sr. introduced something called the Wagner Act, which he humbly named after himself, and this is what created the National Labor Relations Board.
Which basically ended up controlling labor for the oligarchs.
Yes. And has huge mafia connections.
Yep.
And of course, this guy's the mayor of New York, and mafia would never, would have anything to do with the mayor of New York, would they?
Wow.
So John Sr. resigns from his Senate seat in 1949 due to ill health. He gets replaced by a guy who's appointed to replace him as senator of New York, as a guy by the name of John Foster Dulles. And who appointed John Foster Dulles? Oh, I don't know, Governor Thomas Dewey. Same Thomas Dewey who prosecuted and then released Lucky Luciano during Operation Underworld.
The same Foster Dulles we're talking about on our 4 o'clock show.
Yeah. I knew you were, I had to bite my lip last night.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So that's Robert Sr. So before we get to Junior, let's talk a little bit about Tammany Hall, because that's important.
Okay.
Started in 1786 as the Society of St. Tammany, or the Columbian Order. It was incorporated in 1789 as the Tammany Society. So apparently there's some guy by the name of St. Tammany. I have no idea who he is or what he did. Didn't seem relevant. It would become the political machine of the Democrat Party. In the 1780s, Tammany there were a bunch of Jeffersonian Republicans who were opposed to the Manhattan aristocracy. Basically, it was a Hamilton-Jefferson split. Hamilton was backed by a couple of very wealthy New York families, the old Blue Bloods. When immigration starts hitting the country in the 18th century, the Tammany grew in power. This is the whole ward boss situation where you're an Irish guy fresh off the boat and you want a job in a factory. You have to go to the ward boss and he'll give you $1 a day. They got rid of slavery, but we just enslaved the Irish to work for less. And of course, the ward boss did this in return for your vote. You had to vote the way the ward boss tell you. The ward boss would then sell those votes to the politicians. This is why we now have a secret ballot in the United States, because you can't have a ward boss looking over your shoulder. It's exactly this. That's Tammany Hall for you. From the 1854 mayoral election of New York, Tammany Hall controlled the political patronage in Manhattan for more than a century. And they had an expansive network of Irish Catholic district and precinct leaders. This is a very well-organized political machine. And they did not harbor a whole lot of forgiveness for people who stepped out of line. I mean, you voted wrong or spoke out at a meeting, you would get a beating. Some notable members of Tammany Hall. How about Aaron Burr? Yeah, the guy who shot Hamilton?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that feud goes all the way back to Tammany Hall. How about President Martin Van Buren? One of their first mayors were Fernando Wood. And of course, we've already mentioned Robert Wagner and Al Smith. These are very famous politicians that got their start in New York City in the Tammany political machine. The most famous one, I think, modern days was a guy by the name of Boss Tweed. And that was a guy by the name of William M. Tweed, who was actually convicted in 1873 for embezzlement. Just means he got caught. And there were some pretty famous people who opposed the Tammany machine over the years. They would include Samuel Tilden, President Grover Cleveland, President Teddy Roosevelt, his cousin Franklin Delano Roosevelt, whose family made their money in opium, Fiorello LaGuardia from LaGuardia Airport, of course, Thomas Dewey, and Ed Koch. So that's kind of a New York City political history snapshot in about 2 centuries in 10 minutes.
So you want to know where Tammany came from?
Yeah, where is he? I do.
Chief Tamarind is the Indian chief that welcomed William Penn to America when he arrived in 1682. In 1684, the chief's name appeared on several documents bequeathing land to Penn and his fellow Quakers to settle on. The same year, Chief Tamarind and other Delaware leaders traveled to Philadelphia to meet the lieutenant governor of the colony to assert the friendship between their people and newcomers. It says that they referred to the chief as King Tammany and eventually to Sate Tammany.
Interesting. Same Penn family that would eventually have Penn Station, Pennsylvania, named after him.
Yes.
And we talked a little bit about the Penn family with Skull and Bones. It's very interesting. The Penn family were loyalists in the Revolutionary War, which is not necessarily a good thing. And Governor Penn, well, that's a story for a different show when I do the Federalist Report. We just talked about that with Doug a few months ago. All right. So we have an Indian saint in the Penn. All right, back to Robert II, the guy pictured here, Robert F. Wagner Jr. He grows up in New York, and of course he attended the Taft School. Another grooming school, right?
Yes.
Taft, of course, the Skull and Bones.
Yes.
Robert II becomes Scroll and Key, class of 1933. He would go to Harvard Business School. Then he went to the Graduate School of International Studies in Geneva, Switzerland. We're going to be spending some time in Switzerland in the next segment when we start getting into the foundations. But keep this as a data point. That's where Robert II was in the 1930s. And
that's where Allen Dulles was hanging out all the time as well, by the way, between the two wars.
Yes. So we're going to be segueing over to Switzerland a lot going forward. But then he comes back home, goes to Yale Law in 1937. 1938, he runs and wins for the New York State Assembly from 1938 to 42. What happens in 1942?
The war.
World War II. So what does Robert II do? Well, he joins the Army Air Corps, where he served as an intelligence officer.
Which is weird, because I just said that he would have hung around with Allen Dulles in Geneva.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because of course he did.
Because of course he did.
He becomes a lieutenant colonel with the 19th Tactical Air Command and eventually would receive a Bronze Star. Comes home and embeds himself into New York politics. Serves a few different roles. He was the city tax commissioner. And didn't we just talk about embezzlement?
Mm-hmm.
And the mafia? And Tammany Hall? Okay, just checking.
Tax collector.
Tax commissioner, yes. And then he's the commissioner of housing and buildings. Think New York's ever had any graft or grift, related to that?
In the housing? Still going on today.
And of course, he was the chairman of the City Planning Commission. So yeah,
Mafia.
he knows where a lot of bodies are burning. This is the early 1950s. Mafia has control of the city, and he's sitting there taking those meetings.
Yes.
Machine politics. This guy's the epitome of it. Even look at the guy's picture. Doesn't he look like a greasy New York politician?
Yes. He looks exactly like a mafia don.
Yeah. All right, so he runs for mayor in 1953, and this creates a big rift in the Democrat Party. And it started a really big feud because Eleanor Roosevelt supported one candidate, and Tammany boss Carmine DeSapio supports Wagner. I believe I have that right. DeSapio had reluctantly supported Wagner up until 1961, when Wagner decides to run on an anti-Tammany platform, which would eventually end DeSapio's leadership. This guy also single-handedly pretty much put an end to Tammany Hall in 1961.
Ooh.
But let's talk about DeSapio a little bit, because he's an important figure of Tammany. He was the last Tammany boss and the first Italian boss. Tammany was always very Irish.
Damn, he looks like a mafia don too.
Yeah, he was. He worked his way up to DeSapio. It started out as a Tammany errand boy. When he became the boss in 1949, it was the first time an Irish American hadn't held the spot ever.
Wow.
They say he became the first nationally prominent Italian-American political leader in American history.
Wow.
And that's interesting because he has long ties with some gentlemen by the name of Frank Costello, Lucky Luciano, Meyer Lansky, Bugsy Siegel, the Genovese family.
Yeah, Frank Costello shows up in Operation Gladio all the time, and his Wikipedia has his mugshot. That's hilarious.
Yeah. Nice connections for DeSapio. The other thing about DeSapio did, he was famous for doing this, is he reduced the cost that Tammany would charges to sell judgeships from $75,000 to $25,000. Yeah, you used to have to pay $75,000 to become a judge in New York.
I've read about that.
Yeah.
That's how the mafia bought their judges.
Uh-huh. And Wagner's involved in that. Okay, so as mayor, Robert Wagner Jr., get rid of DeSapio. That's more Tammany stuff. He had some pretty interesting accomplishments as mayor. He's the guy that appointed the committee which brought the New York Mets to New York, who, of course, were founded by none other than Joan Whitney Payson from the Whitney family. Those who don't know, in 1957, the Brooklyn Dodgers and New York Giants had both moved to California to become the Los Angeles Dodgers and San Francisco Giants. New York went 5 or 6 years without a National League team, and they were very upset about it because New York was split between Yankee fans and everyone else who liked real baseball.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I had a buddy of mine I grew up with. His dad was used to be a New York cab driver and diehard Mets fan, and I grew up hearing these stories. Mr. Caputo. All right. What else did he do? Okay, so Robert Wagner Jr., he's a pretty famous mayor. He built public housing and schools. How'd that turn out? He created the City University of New York system. He established collective bargaining for city employees. Little union activity. He barred housing discrimination based on race. So he's a progressive. There's a fun story. In 1957, King Saud of Saudi Arabia came to New York to discuss the Suez Crisis solutions. How's that tie into Gladio?
Oh,
yeah.
That's a whole nother story, but yeah, so.
Well, it's funny because Wagner refused to give the king a ticker tape parade, even though President Eisenhower requested it, because he said the king was anti-Jewish and anti-Catholic.
Cool.
Later that year, Queen Elizabeth II visits New York, so he's rubbing some elbows.
Yeah.
All right, so Wagner Jr. would run for the Senate in 1956 and lose. 61 is when he splits with Tammany. He breaks with DeSapio, but still won the Democrat primary anyways. And again, this marked the beginning of the decline of the machine politics in New York. That's according to Wikipedia. You and I both know the machine politics are alive and well.
Yes.
We just Bandami and that coalition. But it's just an inherited, future generation of the same system. So in 1964, the World Fair is going to be coming to New York. And Wagner's very worried about the city's image. So he decides to run a campaign to rid New York City of all gay bars. He had the New York NYPD was running sting operations to try to entrap gay men so they could arrest them.
Such an interesting Democrat history, isn't it?
It really is. In 1962, he would quit the New York Athletic Club because it barred blacks and Jews from membership. The Conservation Society or the Preservation Societies have an interesting story with him too, because he signed a law in 1965 that created the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission. Wagner had previously saved Carnegie Hall from demolition, but he also oversaw the demolition of the original Penn Station, named after your Penn, who you just talked about.
Yep.
1965, he decides not to run for a fourth term as mayor. Gets appointed as ambassador to Spain in 1968.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm. Anything interesting going on in Spain that year?
Well, not necessarily that year, but that's where Otto Skorzeny was hanging out, training all the terrorists that was part of Operation Gladio. And he's the ambassador.
Oh, yeah.
So, he would have. And by the way, that's when Spain was building the military bases that Otto Skorzeny's construction company had the contract for. So, that he met with Otto Skorzeny.
I think that's a very fair speculation.
Wow.
So, interesting guy, huh?
Yeah.
We're not done with him. 1969, he runs for mayor again and lost in the primary to a guy by the name of Mario Procaccino. 1978, President Jimmy Carter calls up Mr. Wagner and says, "Hey, how would you like to be my ambassador to the Vatican, where John Paul II had just been elected?"
Wow.
And he takes that job.
John Paul II is the guy that the Turkish Grey Wolves shot.
That's
and
why
the Vatican is still the money laundering capital for the CIA illicit trades.
All comes full circle, doesn't it?
Yes.
Wagner died in 1991 at the age of 80 of heart failure while being treated for bladder cancer. Pretty fun guy, huh?
Yes.
That's your New York machine politics. All right, let's switch to John Peter Grace.
Well, can we because I really like to emphasize the hereditary nefarious, because if you just click on his son, Robert F. Wagner Jr., he has basically all of the same attributes of his dad. He's in New York New York City politics, New York politics. He went to Felix Xavier Academy. He graduated from Harvard, educated at the Buckley School, eventually goes to Princeton. So yeah, it's just the same thing. Iteration after iteration after iteration.
Uh-huh.
Holy crap. Okay.
I'm just reading through the chat there. Some pretty good comments. Fungible Fanny says, and there's a machine in every city. That is pretty close to being true. And just to put my constitutional hat on for a second, and Shelley the Kiwi says, ticks all the boxes. Constitutional hat for a second. One of the things the Founding Fathers debated in Philadelphia in 1787 was apportionment. You did not want the big states dominating the small states or the small states dominating the big states. Conversely, in the states, you didn't want the cities dominating rural areas or the cities or the rural areas, telling people in the city how to act. The way to strike that balance is you have a bicameral legislature. You initially had that in America, where it's 2 senators per state, and then and then 1 population-based House of Representatives. The states had the same. You get 1 state senator per county, and you get and the rest of the state legislature, or whatever they called it, would be population-based. This is how you got balance. Progressive courts in the 20th century, most notably the Warren Court in 1964 in a case called Reynolds v. Sims, which is my number one cause, got rid of the state senate, 1 per county, and gave us population-based state senates. This has allowed big blue cities to dominate their states. It was not supposed to be that way. California, for example, if it was 1 state senator per county, would have 51 red state senators and 7 blue. Instead, you've got a single county, Los Angeles, with 16 Democrat state senators. You get the balance back to the state house, you change the entire nation's politics, and this can be done in courts. But this is why you've got blue cities dominating. It's because of progressive liberal court. Thank you, Earl Warren. All right, take the constitutional hat off.
Okay.
All right, let's get to our next person, J. Peter Grace. You want to talk about ticking some boxes? J. Peter Grace, born in 1913 in Manhasset, New York. He's known as an industrialist who was the CEO of a company called W.R. Grace & Company for 48 years, making him the longest-serving CEO of a publicly traded company in American history. Have you run into a W.R. Grace & Company in your studies?
Repeatedly. He
Good.
is a CIA operative.
Well, we're going to get into that. I thought you might have seen that one. The company's now known as Grace. In fact, give me 1 second. I'll just show you what the company's all about. Stop sharing.
Oh, I know. W.R. Grace is all through Florida. They're phosphate miners. My brother-in-law works for W.R. Grace. My adopted 2 uncles work for W.R. Grace. I'm very familiar with W.R. Grace.
Yeah, it is a huge company.
It is.
Throw that up on the screen if you don't mind. Oops. Serving diverse markets, refining technologies, chemical processing, plastics and polymers, coatings, general industrial, pharmaceutical solutions. All this stuff is tied in food and beverage, biofuels. That's what these guys do.
They're in every nefarious oligarchical, from a financial perspective, of Operation Condor, of Operation Gladio. They are one of the primary drivers, especially early on.
And these guys are sitting there on the same boards with people like the Rockefellers. And they'll have Council of Foreign Relations seats, and they're dictating that huge operations in South America, which we're about to get into. So, this is J. Peter Grace, the grandson of the founder. Of course, J. Peter himself attended St. Paul's School in Concord, New Hampshire, because of course he did. He would become the CEO when his father, Joseph Peter Grace, suffered a stroke in 1945. But I'm going to go back to the grandfather, the founder. Guy named, and I actually pulled the grandfather's picture up. This is William Russell Grace, W.R. Grace, who would eventually become the mayor of New York City. Huh!
Share that for me.
Oh, shoot, I wasn't sharing, was I?
No.
I'll give that back to you. There he is. That's William Russell Grace. Nice mustache. So let's talk about him. He's an interesting character. Born in 1832 in Ireland to a pretty wealthy family. Him and his father would travel to Callao, Peru in 1851 to try to establish an Irish agricultural community. His father would leave a few years later, but William stays behind and goes to work for a guy by the name of John Bryce and Company. By 1865, the company changed its name to W.R. Grace and Company, so he worked his way up to become the owner. Eventually, William Russell would become the first Irish-American Catholic mayor of New York City in 1880. He was actually opposed publicly to Tammany Hall. He was considered a reformer. On some of the reforms, he addressed police scandals, patronage. We still have patronage today. It's called the spoils system. And basically, that's how you put your person in office, and then you get the government contracts. So he tried to reform that, apparently. He went after organized vice. Tried to reduce the tax rates, and he actually broke up what's called the Louisiana Lottery Company. At the time, the Louisiana Lottery Company ran the only legalized gambling operation in America, and it was full of graft and corruption. And he's the one that broke that up. During his second term, he actually is the mayor to receive the Statue of Liberty when France gave it to us. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
That's all from his wiki page. Let's find out a little bit more about the company. Well, it is based in Columbia, Maryland. Its specialty is chemicals, polyethylene products used in petrochemicals. So I thought I'd have a little bit of fun, because that's just too good to be true. A chemical company operating in South America. Okay, I'm going to bring a different screen up.
Cocaine?
I don't know. Operation Condor, United Fruit Company. I mean, all this stuff.
Actually, W.R. Grace was actually selling chemicals for the cocaine.
Of course they were.
Until they were told not to by Congress.
All right, let's have a little fun with this. Dear Grok, did W.R. Grace have any scandals surrounded? Focus on South America. W.R. Grace and Company, now known as Grace, is an American chemical and materials company founded in 1854, has a long history of operations in South America, particularly Peru, where it began as a trading firm in guano, bird droppings, used for fertilizer and gunpowder. This gets fun. Over time, it expanded into shipping, railroads, sugar plantations, mining, silver and nitrates, chemicals, employing up to 30,000 people in Peru at its peak. While the company contributed to infrastructure and trade, it faced significant controversies and allegations of exploitation, especially in Peru, its primary South American hub. These issues often centered on labor issues, economic imperialism, and political interference, regime change.
And Peru and Bolivia and Colombia are the Crystal Triangle.
Yes. The feudal-style operations and subhuman working conditions before nationalization, W.R. Grace ran large sugar plantations and industrial complexes in a manner critics described as feudal. Workers primarily on sugarcane estates endured subhuman conditions, low wages, poor housing, and limited rights.
And you're not allowed to unionize.
Oh, absolutely not. This drew the ire from Peruvian nationals and labor groups who viewed Grace as emblematic of U.S. imperialism, because it was.
Correct.
And this is why we started doing the regime change stuff in South America, is because of companies like Grace, American Fruit Company, etc.
Well, the companies, when people rose up against them and were successful and had a president that would try to work with the company to allow the workers to unionize, those became the targets of the regime change operation.
You remember how we talked about the, who were the enforcers, before the Secret Service? Just a couple months ago, we were talking about that in the 1800s.
Pinkertons?
Yes, thank you. The Pinkerton. They would have had their own South American, they would have hired the Pinkertons to cut down on its labor. I can almost guarantee the Pinkertons were there in Peru.
Yeah.
So here's a fun one. Seizure of assets is part of economic nationalization, 1969 to 74. Under President Juan Velasco Alvarado's military junta. Sound familiar?
Mhm.
Peru pursued aggressive reforms to reclaim resources from foreign firms. In 1969, the government expropriated 25,000 acres of Grace's sugarcane plantations at Paramonga, blah, 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 under agrarian reform laws, turning them into worker cooperatives. This was part of a $600 million wave affecting U.S. investments aimed at reducing foreign dominance. The government seized Grace's remaining industrial properties, including a chemical paper complex, blah, blah, blah. The company lobbied the U.S. government for intervention, escalating tensions and portraying the seizure as unjust appropriation. While not considered a scandal involving Grace's misconduct, the nationalization was controversial, and this would eventually be settled in the ICSID courts for the international state dispute settlements that I keep hammering home on, that we're talking about with Venezuela just yesterday.
Which you cannot win.
Because it's stacked.
Correct.
And would probably have in America then basically those sanctions on your country and ruins you economically, leading to people to revolt in the streets with a lot of encouragement from American
CIA.
NGOs at the behest of the CIA. And this, people, is how the regime changed, as we're seeing it in real time with W.R. Grace.
Yes.
There's some more sabotage and terrorist claims, but it's the typical resume you would expect from a multinational American company exploiting resources. Do you want to talk about Grace, the company, a little bit more? I think there's some fun stuff on the wiki page.
I want to talk about I want to talk about J. Peter Grace.
All right, we can get to him. All right, let's skip to that. All right.
Grace is a bad company. It is a typical oligarch international syndicate member.
Yes. So Joseph Peter Grace was the second one. Was born in 1872 in Great Neck, New York, and he was known as a businessman, polo player, and owner of thoroughbred horses.
Because of course he was.
Yeah, this is just getting old. This is
well, they have to have something to do with their money that they're stealing from all of us.
That's the oligarchy for you, people.
Don't be bragging up their fun.
Dad, Grace Sr., 1911, was known for buying a 198-acre estate on Long Island from none other than the Whitney family.
Got to keep it in the family.
Yeah. Joseph Sr. would go to Columbia University, and he was a devout Roman Catholic and a member of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, which we're going to talk about at the end. The Knights of Malta, his dad was in. And that matters. So let's talk about J. Peter. You want me to throw his picture back up, or we good with that?
Sure. Go ahead.
Give me 1 second to find it. Born to all kinds of privilege. Share screen. And there you are. Okay. Looks like a typical boardroom chairman, huh?
Yep.
During the Kennedy administration, he was the head of the Commerce Department Committee on the Alliance for Progress, which was aimed to establish economic cooperation between the United States and Latin America.
Yeah, it was a CIA front.
Yes, while your company is exploiting Latin America.
Can we back up a little bit? Are you going to talk about him before Kennedy?
Go ahead. We read what they have. I might not have done a good job in my notes here. I skipped a few things.
Okay, so he was part of the CFR. He was part of Cecil Rhodes' Eugenics Club. He was part of the Round Table. He was part of Project Paperclip. And he actually had a very close relationship with Reinhard Gehlen, who was running the German BND and a former Nazi. he had a very close relationship with the CIA. And as you just mentioned, the Knights of Malta, as well as the Vatican, that was money laundering and smuggling Nazis out of Germany. And I'll save the rest of mine because I don't want to overdo what you're going to do. But obviously, he was awarded the Knights of Malta in 1948. So he was at the same time the CIA is being created, he's inducted into the Knights of Malta, which is where you're going to find all of the CIA people that are working in Operation Gladio. And this guy was part of them.
Yeah, let's do the Malta now. So, what are the Knights of Malta? It's amazing. Now goes by the name of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta. It is considered a sovereign entity under international law, even though it possesses no territory. Other entities with similar status include the International Olympic Committee and the International Red Cross.
Well, the Knights of Malta actually do have a building in Rome.
Yeah, they did. But they have two buildings in Rome, but they have no actual territory. It's part of the city of Rome. They trace the history of the Knights back to the Knights Hospitaller in 1099 in the Crusades. We're talking secret societies here. Knights of Malta is a secret society. It is made up of 13,500 knights worldwide, and 33 are professed religious Knights of Justice. 33, there's that number again for you.
Yep.
And of course, they're known as a permanent observer status at the United Nations General Assembly, which puts them in a perfect position to do what, Colonel?
Do all kinds of nefarious shit.
Yeah, they focus their efforts publicly on what they say Worldwide Relief Corps and humanitarian efforts. You know what their involvement is with Catholic charities, and all of the recent immigration into the United States?
Right in the middle of it.
Right smack dab in the middle. And here's this guy running multinational corporations, sitting on the CFR, getting named to presidential commissions, etc. It's pretty dark.
Yep. So also, the American Committee for Liberation, I have in my notes. It was called the American Committee for Liberations from Bolshevikism, was created by Reinhard Gehlen under the supervision of the CIA's Radio Liberty and Radio Free Europe. And J. Peter Grace was a trustee of that organization.
Too many damn connections, huh?
Yeah, they work directly with Frank Wisner's covert operations.
I had a fun little side note on J. Peter. In 1980, Reagan selected him, even though he's a Democrat, to lead what's called the Grace Commission. And that commission was a government commission on waste and inefficiency in the federal government. Doge.
So, did you know that he was very involved in AmeriCares?
Yeah, I saw that in the bio. I didn't really. I didn't put it in my notes.
AmeriCares is the thing that Joe Biden was involved in that traffics children.
Okay.
And J. Peter Grace was intimately involved in that as well. He was the chairman of the advisory committee of AmeriCares. And he was, let's see, while he was on it from 1982 to 95. It included William Simon, CFR, Treasury Secretary under Richard Nixon, and the honorary chair of AmeriCares was Brzezinski. And ambassador at large at the time was Barbara Bush. And the advisory committee included Prescott Bush Jr., brother to former President Bush. Yeah.
Pretty interesting connections, huh?
Yeah. He was a CFR member. He colluded with the Rockefeller exploitation of Latin America. And he does, in the book I read, Thy Will Be Done with Nelson Rockefeller. He's kind of like it talks about the Rockefellers, all of them, but Nelson Rockefeller especially. And J. Peter Grace shows up in there several times as because, of course, Nelson Rockefeller's specialty was South America. And
Yes.
so was the Grace company. And so they worked in collusion with each other.
And you would have seen J. Peter Grace sitting on quite a few boards of directors of different philanthropies, etc., and that sort of thing. So
he was on the Council for Latin America. Of course he was.
Well, those are the three villains I had for, and their families we had for today. And I'd say we did, just connection after connection, everything full circle. And what didn't we name today? We got CIA, Gladio, Latin America, opium smuggling, Queen of England, King Saud. A lot of connections today. And of course, they all play polo and race thoroughbred horses and went to grooming schools and were in intelligence, either in the directly with the OSS or indirectly, like J. Peter Grace.
Yes.
I think on my channel, I'm going to name this show The Political Machine, but there's a lot more to today than just the machine politics, you know?
Yeah, machine politics and the oligarchs.
Yeah. And we didn't even get through the 1930s. There's some more fun guys coming, and I know you're going to be doing a lot of talking, I think, next week, because there's a couple guys that are really up your alley that you've spoken about recently. So, but we'll go in chronological order. When we get there, you'll know what to do.
Yep, just team me up. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us on another edition of Operation Gladio Meets Secret Societies with our guest, War Hamster Brady. I love these shows.
Yeah, they are a lot of fun. And hopefully we'll be back on a regular schedule and do these at least weekly.
Yes. All right. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I'll see you at 4 o'clock.